call this November 2nd, 2023 meeting of the EMPC to order. We can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, this morning. Start with introductions, go around the room, and for everybody's benefit, introduce everybody. I'm Bill Emerson, Lake County Surveyor.
Kathy Third, Nursing Department.
Laura Baum, Administrative Assistant for Nursing. Danielle Hayes, Program Specialist in Franklin, Indiana. Susan Mahalo, the Nature Conservancy.
Tim Keeson, City of Over. Bob Forster, Town of Cowles.
Bonnie Hawksworth with the Town of Dune Acres. Jan Babs, Town of Dune Acres.
Reggie Cortels, Executive Director, Indiana MS4 Partnership, and I work on stormwater compliance.
David Goldfarb, Wildlife Habitat Council, and Community Tree.
Kevin Lee, nursing staff.
Town of Edgewood, Nursing Staff.
Jen Birchfield, Natural Resources Planner with NURBC.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And welcome. We do have our meeting minutes from the August 3rd meeting. Hopefully you guys had a chance to check those out. Does anyone have a motion to approve, hopefully?
I'll make a motion to do
Give a second.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the August 3rd minutes. Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Minutes are approved. Thank you. No further comments? I'll take the floor. All right, we don't have any formal public comments today. Yeah, move on to our grant application. Good.
Yeah, so I wanted today, start the last meeting of the year, and earlier, I think the first meeting of the year, we had a really long conversation about grants and helping with grants and more grants and not all the things people wished for happened, but there's been, I don't know, the feeling of a lot of people that there's a money tree out there and we're just not getting our share of the leaves or apples or whatever. NURBC has submitted grant applications. We partnered on other grant applications. And so I thought we'd talk then most of mine are no. My personal experience on this is no response. I've got maybe 3 or 4 grant applications that I partnered on that are in space. But Jen's had one, and then I wanted to kind of go around the room. Who has applied for grants? Who's been successful? Who hasn't? What have we learned? Have things changed? And the process, one of the things we learned at NURBC, not me, but somewhere else, is that even though there's all this money that the federal agencies want to get out really fast, the bureaucracy behind it hasn't really changed. And so you can, even if you get it, you don't always get it. So I'm mostly going to turn to Jen and talk about.
Yeah, and I love that you used a tree analogy.
Yeah, see.
Yes, so NURBC did apply for the Inflation Reduction Act grants through the U.S. Forest Service for urban community forestry and primarily focused, I think all of the Inflation Reduction Act, the intention is that those focus on quote-unquote disadvantaged communities, which there are a number of tools that you can use to make the case or define what those are. So NURBC did put in an application to that program. The intent of that, it was through the community program. The intent was really, we can, in the past, we can find money to plant trees all day. But there are gaps in what is typically fundable in terms of some of the needs we see for, if you're going into a community and there are standing dead ash trees all over the place after emerald ash borer, or just aging trees that are problematic for whatever reason, there's a lot of need to address those, to get community buy-in for planting new trees and general sound urban forestry. So we put in an application, it was a couple million. It was basically going to fund professional arborist services, so that most of it have been contracted out for a certified arborist to perform services for Gary, Hammond, East Chicago, Whiting, and New Chicago. The reason for selecting those communities was that it's 0% match if you are only focusing on disadvantaged, quote unquote, census tracts. And also there's just a lot of need there. Low tree equity scores, not a municipal arborist or forester on staff. So the intention was to have an arborist provide services such as tree inventory, assessment of condition. So you could, come up with a list or a plan of these trees are problematic for safety, these trees are dead, these trees are dying, they need to be pruned back. Actually removing some of those dead trees that are a big issue, and then creating sort of a plan for replanting so that as our partners come in, NERC through our existing tree award program, Student Conservation Association through their tree planting, Wildlife Habitat Council, could have kind of a ready-to-go list of these are the priority areas for planting trees. Unfortunately, we did not get funded this round. We are hopeful, we've gotten a little bit of feedback from U.S. Forest Service and just from looking at what was awarded. I think that the strategy that was taken with awarding these funds was largely to award directly to municipalities. And so even though our grant would have directly given services to municipalities, it seems as though municipalities were more directly awarded. I am really excited that Michigan City and LaPorte did receive awards, so that's great news. And we'll work to support them as they carry out their grants. There is still some hope that might get funded. There are indications that a few nonprofit organizations nationwide did get funded to do pass-through grants for some of these other programs. So there's a little bit of hope that maybe they'll reach out to us when they finalize their grant, and we can see a lot of sub-awarding. One other takeaway for me in that process was that, in my experience with pursuing competitive grants, I've not really reached out to congresspeople, to representatives to get letters of support, and it does seem that was kind of a metric in this, was looking whether or not you had a letter of support from your congressperson. So that's kind of a lesson learned, that is something that we should do going forward with Inflation Reduction Act funding. Daniel, you guys applied. Did you guys get funded?
No.
No.
That's why I came here for the therapy.
Okay, yeah, we can have therapy. Any
Seems like a
takeaways
somber meeting.
that you had?
I
I
should have done.
think
But we've had some wins, and I want to share. But on that one, no word, nothing.
Okay.
And the concept that we had not to change, or
No.
the concept we work with part of the community participation that we do, funded by the Forest Service GLRI program. So we get grants over 2 years that cover funding for doing work with industries in West Indiana and Southeast Chicago, depending on the year of the grant or whatever. And so that's our role in community. We do have a GLRI grant now. We do have an EPA community air monitoring grant that I want to share with you too. And that NERC is a sub-awardee. But on the IRA, that we also thought that could be a transformational opportunity for us. Given that we're always short staff, or we're changing people, or we need more of a regional approach. We didn't get it, or as far as we know, nobody has ever told us what happened with that. But the whole idea behind that grant was to help to get companies who will be doing plantings for pollution prevention, environmental justice type interactions. So companies can invite people in the community, or they can be planting in the community depending on the event or activities, across the fence lines, basically. So the concept was to use a canopy approach. It's called canopy equity, which is now a common phrase when you think about disadvantaged EJ communities. So having a canopy equity approach to industry so they can invest in the communities where they operate, as a pollution prevention effort. But that didn't get funded. So, and of course, Hammond, major parts of Hammond, East Chicago, all of East Chicago, all of Gary, parts of Whiting are environmental justice, categorized or designated communities. I mean, and you can keep going on and on. You know? So we didn't get it. No. Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy and I kind of noted that it's
But
interesting.
good points that about.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've always been kind of told like partnerships, and
Yeah,
it seems that the approach for this one was maybe giving the funds directly to municipalities, which is just, I think, a good takeaway to know that I don't know if that will be common to other programs through IRA, but for this one, that seemed to be the approach.
And we're still waiting on community infrastructure fueling grant, but that was a big partnership project. And so I'm working on a brownfield grant right now that's due very soon. And we have a kind of the forum and the complicated partnership, the Urban League, and the first input I've gotten back from technical assistance is this is too complicated. Simplify it, much simpler. So how do you do a coalition or a partnership or a collaboration and keep it simple? I mean, so that was when I started thinking, well, yeah, have the federal agencies been telling us for 15 years, work together, collaborate, and now they're like, oh, it's too hard. And not to go into too much detail, the Marquette Greenway has been somewhat challenged in that area.
Kathy, one of the things that I think we really need to look at is educating the municipalities. I'm going to work with IU and we're going to put together a one-day training program for municipal employees on grant writing so that they do not have to pay the 30% markup to hire someone to do it, but also to get them to understand what it means to be a collaborative application or a single application, and hopefully they can move forward. Because a lot of times the people that sit here don't get that message back to the people that are doing the work. So obviously we'll reach out to you for that and help put that, probably through CURE or maybe through the alumni group.
But I'm concerned that we're giving all this advice and putting a lot of energy into collaborating, and if it has that trend changed?
Well, I think.
And maybe it's just an IRA thing because they're trying to get all this money out the door fast. It's not going fast.
The struggle is not just with the grant writing, it's with the managing the pass-through grants.
Yeah.
Because they have to meet the uniform guidance, they have to meet the federal reporting requirements through you, when they report through you. And that is a real struggle for the municipalities. They can, a lot of them, I think, have the capacity to write grants. It's the management of those grants and meeting match and being committed to meeting that. That's my experience.
Yeah.
We just finished the 10 applications for the Lake Michigan Coastal Program, and we reviewed all the municipal applications. First round, I passed all of them through, so now they have until January to do their final application. But this was an element that was part of that, huh? Yeah, was managing it. How are they can ask for this, and this is what we want to do, but in a municipality that's small, like Long Beach, and doesn't have a lot of staff, we need to show them how to do that, okay?
I just know from our experience, we're a medium-sized city, but grant application and administration is almost impossible. We just don't have the staffing. We don't have the resources. We had partnered up with Delta Institute, even though they do charge a markup, as you indicated. But in today's world, where everything's a challenge, especially for cities, it's hard. I don't know if there's really an answer to this, but in my opinion, from being involved in grants for many years, it's not easy. Just the administration part of it is overwhelming at times because all the rules and regulations that the grants require for paperwork and budgeting and everything else, it's a challenge. And like I say, I don't have an answer for that, but from our experience, it's difficult.
And I think
So
that was
maybe,
kind of Nurse's
maybe
intention.
focusing the class then more so on the writing would be on the management and showing people how you can manage this, whether it's online, whether it is with a partner or with IU or Purdue or whatever, how you could do this. And that's
Let's get an
good because
understanding of what's allowable costs. I mean,
Yes.
That's a real struggle.
And I think that was kind of part of the approach with the forestry proposal.
Right. We will do all that stuff.
We know that these individual communities do not have the capacity to administer this grant. But if NERC can apply for it, administer a contract, we have the systems in place for that, then we can provide those services to the communities. I thought it was a good approach, didn't land. Joe?
Was it explicit? Did you explicitly explain that in the application, that to get at the capacity type issue? Because, I mean, your application, Danielle's and all that stuff, it wasn't the only, like, we had a number of what we thought were really good applications coming out of the region, a lot of effort and weeks and months of effort put into it, not to even get invited back for, like, like that second round, like the full, like, application. And, generally, we got some pretty good feedback and some positives on all that stuff, but the reviewers just felt that we didn't tell the story well enough. We can't assume that they know what we're thinking.
That's a good point. And I tried, I thought I did, but apparently I didn't.
This is a rough round.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm partly asking this because I'm in the middle of a grant right now, and on the brownfield grants, they really want you to focus on, they have a coalition category, but I'm supposed to somehow prove why my coalition members don't have the capacity to apply for or manage a grant on their own. I don't know how do I prove that, and probably in, 2 sentences, why, how can I say in 2 sentences why, Hobart is not my example, but if Hobart was my example, why? Why is it too hard to manage a federal grant? And I could write till I'm blue in the face, because federal grants are a pain in the...
Yeah, that's a big one, because we've noticed, that one of the reasons why we did not get the IRA grant is because a bunch of people in my organization were a little more selfish this time around, thinking, well, this is money that we can manage. Our successful grants have shown, especially recently, especially since the pandemic or during the pandemic, is that you have to partner, and you also have to offer sub-awards. So if people are saying, if the EPA or whatever the agency is saying, well, we want you to apply these grants to disadvantaged communities, EJ communities, you have, somehow financially, you have to tell us how you're going to use that money, or how these people, community groups are going to use the money, and they have to, you have to. So the more sub-awards that we made, the more success we receive, NIFWIC, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, etc. The challenge with that is exactly that these organizations, when they're written for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for salary, fringe time, most of them, some of them are, they have access to funding to do free purchases and or green infrastructure type projects. They don't have the capacity. I mean, they potentially could, but they don't have the people or the knowledge, or how do you fill out all this paperwork, all these grants, sub-award contracts, invoicing, on a regular basis, reporting to us, what did you do with that money? So all of a sudden we become grantees too, and my organization is kind of like, for this little money, and so it's a really hard. So one area that I think is important for us to deal with, especially if so much, or at least now with the present administration, if so much money is going, or they're trying to push so much money into communities directly, we need to help the community figure out, how do we, where is that fiscal capacity, or to handle that.
One of the things, Bill, that came up at NISWAG, for those of you that don't know, NISWAG is the Northwest Indiana Stormwater Advisory Group, Lake Porter, LaPorte County, all of the MS4s that are permitted under the Clean Water Act. They meet once a month. Suggestions have been coming up that there's some way that they could act as the pass-through, and without going through becoming a 501c3. the Indiana Partnership is a 501c4, and maybe they could come as an umbrella. We've had the same request from the Angola Group and from the SWAC in Southern Indiana. They are looking for, not everybody has a regional planning commission within their umbrella. So they're looking for something that would be able to work as this. And the partnerships with the permitted entities has grown to a point where they're looking for help doing other things. You remember when we did it all, it's up to cleaner air? Well, they're looking for a regional message outlet, so municipalities don't have to spend so much money on the education outreach, that we can do it as a cooperative.
Well, when we tried that, then the IDEM seemed to want each community to still have individual education.
I know, and
that
we're
was
gonna
a
try to
duplicate.
we're gonna try to get past that, especially now with the new permit, that might allow us to do that a little bit more.
But, and a lot of the regional commission planning organizations do coalition grants, but they usually don't want to fund that, and, or you get, the amount they allow for the administration is so small. I mean, we do know how to follow all the uniform guidance, and we have, I feel like at NERC, we have the technical knowledge to do a lot of things, but not the capacity, because
The new grant from EPA on outreach and education, which is $27 million, that's supposed to go to local entities, so I've got to figure out how I can get my hands on some of that money, and how we can do that.
I'm concerned that even though we're eligible, that somebody's looking at these things and saying, that's not a local entity.
What about the community foundations, and each county has?
It's one of the things that was brought up, yeah, could we go through that? It's funny that you say that, because the community foundations in Northwest Indiana are probably one of the strongest group in the state. They don't have that in Northeast or in the Southwest as much as they do here, even the Evansville area. So it could be something, this is kicking off for the new year. There's a member of the group that wants us to create this directory of all the contractors and developers that work in Northwest Indiana. And I think they thought I could whip that out on my computer at night. But just putting all that together is gonna be a lot, of finding people that will do that, you know?
It might be kind of interesting on any of these, since they go back eventually, when they have the approved lists that go out, who got what type of thing, and see if there's any commonalities, or to do some background, kind of like checking.
Yep.
Some snooping around to figure out what can we determine based on what we find online or reaching out directly, how they are organized, I guess, in a way, what made them successful? You know, what structure did they have in place lately that made them successful? I'm kind of curious to see if there is, for those that were successful, how many of them were honestly very small or nimble organizations, or how many of them were like larger municipalities that seem to have like no wants.
Yeah, I think on the municipality layer, yeah, I think that's a good idea, because, you know, what made many of these municipalities so successful, and they're all over the place, you know, so, you know, across the whole country, you know, like in California, Nevada, you know, like places where you say, you know, they don't have enough trees there, but you got, so like what made them successful? I think that there was a big side, you know, that you had they go to the very large urban forestry organizations like American Forest, Arbor Day Foundation, Student Conservation Association, Morton Arboretum. They got 10, 20, 30, you know, American Forest got 40 million for them to decide how to sub-award. We don't know, you know, we don't know the criteria or what made them so successful, but obviously they're very well connected, you know.
I do think that is a
Yeah,
big,
it's not very grassroots.
I think that's a big trend though, because it's so much money, because a lot of the grants they are doing that with, they were doing that with, well, the EJ, they wanted, so, because I didn't have the capacity to do the Alliance is doing it. They want somebody to take a bunch of money and then pass out smaller grants. We are part of a grant for, they wanted the, what are they called? Coalition of Local Finance Development Finance Authorities. CDFA, that's their acronym.
Like hubs.
Hmm?
Like hubs.
Yeah, hubs, they're all, I mean, all throughout it, there's a lot of hubs. And I feel like that hurts us because we don't have the capacity to be a gigantic hub. They're looking for a giant organization
Well,
to
they'll
be the big
do
hub.
is
Either a
hub
giant
now.
or a discrete municipality.
Yeah,
And it
like,
was,
there's in between, like, and maybe they're right, the in between layers, everybody needs a little money. So maybe that is not very cost effective from the.
looking at who got funded statewide, which municipalities, I have to say it was a little heartbreaking to see, you know, these are funds for disadvantaged communities, and some of the communities that were funded are disadvantaged, certainly, but looking at like Bloomington and Muncie getting funded and like Gary, Chicago, Cameron getting nothing was a little heartbreaking.
I used to accept work.
What's that?
Well, and that's the question, if they had gone in
they
individually,
had
would they
gone
have got, they probably
individually,
would have gotten a grant.
They probably would have, but they weren't in a position to do so. So it's kind of one of
Yeah.
those where the communities had to be disadvantaged, but also had to have enough capacity to do a discrete
So
proposal.
what I think is you have to be a community that's not disadvantaged with a couple of disadvantaged census tracts. That you're applying on behalf of this small subset of your community. And I think that's nailing how it's set up, because, the same thing, I like Broncos, they kind of want to get into rural, smaller communities, but then there's no way.
But it is a good point though, just to take a look at who did get it. And I, as far as I'm aware, in Northwest Indiana, the communities, the municipalities who applied for it got it. So to my knowledge, that's Michigan City and LaPorte. And I'm
I
not aware
thought-
of any other community that discreetly applied.
I thought South Haven was gonna do it through Portage or whatever, but here again, we get back to they didn't have people to manage it. They didn't have the staff to do that, so, trying to figure that out. I have a question about, and I'm just asking you this, because when you come in and you see all the names sitting out there, and I see so few people at this table, how do we get the people that have the input back here to this table? I know we only meet quarterly, but, I mean, do we have to have breakfast or something? How do we get these people here?
I don't know, I want to say that we actually are one of the more successful advisory committees here, so.
Oh, I know that, it
That's
just
true.
always ends up a small, group, and there's so many good people out there.
Well, I think, yeah, everybody's stretched, I mean,
Right.
look at me, it's my
Well,
first.
so clearly that, I mean, that's,
But
I
at
have
the
more
same-
turnout when I do this. George, do you?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, I'd like to thank Porter County Councilman Andy Vasquez for being here, and I think he may be able to help us.
Mhm.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
I think we need to turn the conversation to figure out some of these issues, the challenges that we have, because, yeah, there are people like me or my organization, we're like entrenched in doing our thing, and,
And stormwater's the same way.
I'm actually pretending, or we do a good job some occasions, and this year was particularly difficult, but we pretend that we can tell the story about Northwest Indiana very clearly, obviously we take the role of linking industry to community, and, but maybe we're not that cool, we're not that, like, there are some challenges there, I see some, and there is also another thing that I want to bring up is like, having a meeting about diversifying, how do we diversify income? Something, Susan, you mentioned the foundations, how are we all reaching out to the community foundations, or some other big foundations out of Chicago, obviously, Great Lakes Foundations. There is now their own set, because part of my organization deals with environment, sustainability, governance, they track all the corporate BS stuff. And so with the trends with that, there's investment platforms now. So now, for example, the council, the Great Lakes governors and premiers, one of those Great Lakes Council has developed an investment platform that first started with forests and trees and carbon sequestration. Now it's more interconnected to biodiversity and water and all that kind of stuff. So they're much more. So there are other platforms and other ways of funding each other's projects, Northwest Indiana projects that I think we're not paying attention to, you know. Yes, there are the grants that are unbelievable right now for us in the environmental field, you know, so we want to be transformational, but it's still, you know, so I think, I mean,
I know there has been talk in the environmental realm of, you know, funding opportunities that are coming through not our traditional environmental channels, and trying to key into those and make those connections. For example, of course, NERC being here, you know, DOT types of funding that might be appropriate for some of our projects. I will say, Danielle, I think Community is really, I love Community because it is such a partnership that I feel like we haven't been feeling turfy and competitive with each other, that, and it may be to our detriment, but if we're both putting in a proposal, we tend to give each other a letter of support and share language and try to make the case that we're all working together. Hopefully that's not to our detriment. But
Steve Barker gave a presentation last week on what NIPSCO and NiSource are planning to do for long-term green infrastructure. And unfortunately, it was just for the water group in Portage, and it's an awesome thing. I'm going to have him come to the state MS4 program. I'd like him to come to NISWAG. And he's talking about opportunities to partner with communities on the NiSource and NIPSCO right-of-ways under the power lines and in the ground, and what they're planning to do to help communities have green, long-term sustainability. Love that word, everybody's using it. And find out how he can help them. And he's being promoted at NIPSCO to manage this program. So we should stay kind of on top of what they're doing. And yesterday I had a conference call with INDOT. INDOT now is trying to work and developing a statewide message on how they're going to work with communities and how they can partner and that kind of stuff. So making sure we get that information out.
Is it specific to stormwater?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
INDOT is under.
They didn't ask for MPO about that?
No, it's stormwater. INDOT is under not an individual permit, but a phase 1 permit.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at now Ohio and Minnesota and Michigan a little bit on how they create a comprehensive stormwater message. And they have so many other projects and things that are going on. So this was focusing on this. And we just put an INDOT member on the MS4 Partnership Board so that we could get some input from them. We have a toll road representative. The toll road wants to get more involved with contiguous partners. If you're a community that has the toll road running in through you, that there will be money for education and outreach from them. So, and they're going to continue to support our contractors and developers workshop. So these guys are there trying to figure out how they're going to spend their money, and I can help them with that. So, looking at how they could partner and that type of stuff.
Or Forest Service.
I was gonna say, I spent 4 hours yesterday with Partners for Clean Air trying to figure out how to get more partners, how to get more attentive. I know that Drive Clean Indiana has been really successful with grants, but we had another one that we went in, it was not even money, it was technical support, and we went with them to apply. It was like a peer-to-peer kind of thing, and they said, well, we're not really interested in regions. And then I was working with Gary and some other organizations statewide about the Solar for All, and they said, well, no, we just want to work with individual. I wanted to do, can we put community solar, like not individual homeowners, but like City Hall kind of stuff. And they were like, no, you don't really fit in with the partnerships I was trying to be engaged in.
Well, are they looking at the solar fields? What are they looking at?
They just wanted to do distributed solar for.
Elkhart County has the RV industries.
Well, it's not, I guess my point is just that we're trying to be that for a lot of the municipalities that have capacity.
Yeah.
We also struggle with capacity, and then maybe all this money really is just for municipalities, and we should get out of the way, or we don't. I don't know. But I wanted to ask more about, is it more successes? Anybody have a lot of successes? the drag scene has actually had a lot of successes.
Yeah, no, I personally don't do grant writing,
Oh.
I just have a highlighted page that.
Yeah, they gave you to talk about, that's what I,
And handouts too, I have a lot of handouts as well.
okay.
I had a question.
Uh-huh.
If anybody here has had any experience with the Next Level Conservation Trust for land acquisition with Indiana? Has anyone done one of those?
I have not, but who comes to
Shirley
mind, I
Hines.
think, who might have some knowledge on that would be Shirley Hines
Yeah.
Land Trust. I don't know, does TNC have any?
I'm sure, I know we provided some assist, but I'm not involved.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I think if you know Chris Kraus with Shirley Hines,
Yeah.
of course you do. I believe, I know you're not with
Yeah,
Shirley
I
Hines
think
anymore,
they,
but
they
I
were
believe
doing
they've
a
had
lot
some
of
success.
success. I mean, another thing that I've, a lot of times we partner with Chicago because we are a small region. I mean, in Indiana, we're a big region, but in the world, we're a small region, and we put a lot of effort, I put a lot of effort into those partnerships, and then if they, oh, well, we had to cut your budget when they finally submitted, we couldn't balance the budget. I know you asked for $80,000, we're gonna give you 25. Thank you.
Well, and then NIPWIP sometimes comes back and says, we're not gonna honor your indirect rate,
Yeah,
we're only gonna give you 13%. So.
yeah, or like the.
And what do you go for? What do you normally, indirect rate, what do you?
Oh, I think ours is like 23% right now, somewhere around there.
And, well, the Brownfield grants, they cap your indirect, so I have to back calculate, so my salary, the amount of staff time I could buy is capped by the indirect cap. And so then everything else goes out to other people, which then my project is complicated now, because it was gonna be simple, but it can't be, because I have to give out money. Which, I don't think a lot of people understand that either, that, when we apply for grants, we don't keep very much in-house, we can't, and then we don't have as much time. That's the other thing is, the amount of time and help, and it is complicated. So you want to lend your expertise, but then, I don't know. So, I don't know if we've accomplished a lot. It's just, maybe it is just a therapy session.
Any other thoughts just from anyone who's been a little quieter of grant successes?
I agree with you that we need to get a better connection with our state representative, and maybe even our senator, because they can carry a lot of weight. You know, that's basically how the shoreline thing got done, and so we need to maybe have that, so they understand, even though we're small, we have a lot of committed and working communities.
Yeah, that's one that, a lot of the grant pots that I've gone for before, it never occurred to me to even do that. It's competitive, it's how well you write the grant. But I think, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, it does seem to be kind of a
I think it's depends on the agency. I don't even think EPA allows you to do that. Like
Yeah.
Brownfields, we don't even want, they don't want letters at all, it's lists of names. So, I don't know, but they are all different. That's agriculture, and I think agriculture is maybe more political. I don't know, maybe you have to know. And I know that Drive Clean, and I know you don't know this, they always get the political letters of support too.
Yeah, can I suggest maybe as a subcommittee or having another meeting where I was thinking, one of the things I'm trying to do with my own staff, we are a national organization, so it's really hard, is to actually do some forensics on the grants that we did not get. We were very close, we had a great, and then I'll pivot to the grants that we got, because you guys are included in the nurses, or you guys, everybody is included in the nurses grant, small. But we applied, for example, EPA pollution prevention grants for EJ communities. We had a great proposal, Purdue University ecological engineering program, which is relatively new, but really is trend-setting. So it's, you could cover nature-based solutions, you could cover ecology, conservation, green infrastructure, all of that mixed in there, so it sounds fancy. And then we didn't get it because we use, EPA Office of Sustainability got back to us saying that we use nature-based solutions. or ecological solutions, and they're not considered to be pollution prevention. So you cannot apply natural systems to, and we're like, and
Pollution
so
prevention is-
me, I mean, I fight it until like and Purdue is like, we cannot do anything else. I mean, that's what they said. That was the determination. Even though we asked those questions before in pre-meetings, and we had a lot of opportunities. We recorded all of it. So, but the application is great. The quality of it, the way it's structured can be applied to other things too, to schools, to STEM, to So we should put it on the table. And then we also did. By invitation, BP, the British Petroleum had a biodiversity challenge. So one of the trends right now in the corporate world is that investors and stakeholders are asking their companies, how green you are, and are you measuring and tracking how green you are? And biodiversity is one of those metrics.
And this is sustainable.
So to be sustainable, are you having an impact on biodiversity? Are you killing everything around your facilities, or what's going on? So BP had a call, international call, and by invitation only, the Whiting Refinery came up to Shirley Hines and us. Should we, and they give you 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe if you're happy, if you're lucky. And so it's almost like, well, there are great opportunities for ecosystems in West Indiana that we can grab and take to the, improve 4-year grants, $1 million, really nice investment. And it was well written, and we got invited back for a second round, and at the end they say, well, there were so many competing things in it, whatever. So we didn't get it because they didn't have enough money. But the crafting of that grant, I thought it was really good. I mean, it could be better. So we should have a meeting, short story long. We should have a meeting where, I'll bring my grants, other organizations bring their grants, the good ones and the bad ones. And we should figure out, well, what's working. So we have a GLRI grant, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant, is a stormwater runoff grant, by the way, where we have to plant 600 trees at the minimum and restore 40 acres on private lands. So nice source with their land, the right of ways, that could be a one. We can actually do schools, so we're talking to the East Chicago High School to do their front native landscaping, because it really looks horrible. So could BP now, take notice of that effort and maybe co-fund it. So that's the opportunity with the GLRI, so public-private partnerships, but we also have an EPA community air monitoring grant that was awarded 14 months ago. And so finally we've gone all through the paperwork. We burned a lot of our salary time on paperwork, and NERC was written in for $10,000, and so was High Vistas High School, the New Academy in Portage, and we have a little money for East Chicago for the teachers and students. And so we have $10,000, but we do have a larger partnership. We have a lot of industries participating, and it's multiple regions. So it's Detroit, Northwest Indiana, and Southeast Chicago. So that's another grant that eventually, will be great to showcase to the EMBC meeting. I can prepare some slides.
When you have trouble, you ever reach out to Janet McCabe? When she gave the presentation after her appointment, she said if Indiana ever needed help, just send her a note. And I don't know if that's appropriate, or just say, sometimes in Region 5, you could say it. I mean, Hollow's up there now, but Janet McCabe is at the top. So why couldn't we tell her that Indiana's struggling, or Indiana needs support in this area, or whatever?
I don't know. I know that. I mean, I've had some successful grants, but a lot of times my grants fall apart because I'm one person and there's a map. I have to describe the budget 5 different places and times, and if I have one number wrong somewhere, it can just, and that's my fault because I don't have it done 2 weeks ahead for somebody else to have time to review it. So I don't know. I mean, and early at the beginning of the year, part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation, because this came up at the beginning of the year, people wanted us to do meetings and workshops about grants, and I said that we didn't have capacity really at that time to organize all that, and nobody else really did either, so it didn't happen.
And I know NERC in general, especially the, excuse me, full commission meetings, is good information sharing. I know like Dry Clean comes in, Ryan had a bunch of the EV brands and
Yeah.
communities were all over trying to get information. So that's definitely a good thing, I think.
Mhm.
NERC's role in getting information out to communities about when those grants are available. It's just, I guess that's a good discussion on how involved NERC should be in actually writing grants. to the
And I
communities.
will also mention for partners here, the Urban Waters Federal Partnership, which is, I used to work for them, now it's Victoria Whitting is the ambassador, puts together a really great e-newsletter that every month comes out and features federal funding opportunities. Those are going to be tailored to water, restoration, so not as much for air quality and things of that nature. But if you're not on that e-list, that's kind of the intent, a big part of the intent of
Yes,
that program.
Susan, are you on that list
Oh, yeah.
for Urban Waters? I thought so, okay.
It's very good.
I mean, looking at the draft budget for 2024, and it's not finalized, I think, looking at Tom right now, I think that I am 100% in the transportation planning budget. I don't think I have any other budget, so really, technically, unless, I shouldn't even be writing grants, because I'm being paid.
You don't
by
have an
federal.
environmental budget anymore?
I do, but I have no match for it, so I have to give it all away.
Oh.
So it's interesting, I mean, I'm gonna get some money that's not that, so I can keep doing stuff, but,
I think within this group, yeah, I mean, reflecting, I haven't participated or whatever, but I mean, the question was, why do we have more people? I think one thing that we can do better in this group that can help alleviate maybe that challenge, one of the big challenges with these grants is the partnership component. And so it's like wrangling paths, where you have 1 month, 2 months if you, again, lucky, you organize a complex partnership, fiscally, administratively, content-wise, roles. So you have to structure, structuring the project, it's hard already. But imagine, structuring with multiple partners, with different rates, I don't know. So just that maybe, having structured partnerships to plug them into like 2 or 3 examples that we can say, community tree, maybe we can build on that, because it has, we're using it for pollution prevention, another, SCA is using it for job training, there's gotta be some.
I think we have that very well with the nonprofits. I think we have a conservation group, I think we don't maybe have that, I mean,
Yeah, the resilience.
with the municipalities, we just have NERC that we are, in fact, a collaboration.
Well, and I will say, I think it's an issue, Reggie, that, that we don't have more people at the table all the time, although UPC tends to get decent turnout. Honestly, after COVID, I'm finding in all of my networks, people expect remote meetings.
Yeah.
People don't want to come, in person, and it's a struggle because you get different levels of engagement in person versus virtual. But if you do in person and nobody's there,
How much engagement is that?
Yeah, we
but
have
this
the
has
same
to be in
thing,
person,
yeah,
so
with the-
We have to do it, that's one of the reasons
This
why
has
we
to
went
be,
to
yeah.
fewer official meetings,
Yeah.
because it has to be a public meeting. And maybe we could use the time better on the alternate Thursdays, I think like the Dry Clean has taken a good advantage of that and put events in.
We've had the same thing with the partnership. Now the members of the board are from all over the state.
people got comfortable, they don't want to put
Yeah.
a button.
The president wants face-to-face, so for him, we do 4 or 5 times a year as we lead up to the annual meeting. But if you want participation, you have to go to the screen, they just won't all drive to Indianapolis. So
That's a struggle,
it
I don't
is a
know what the
challenge.
answer is.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we've been struggling with is just churn in some of the cities. And especially with their parks departments, oh my gosh, City of Gary, I don't even know who the parks director is right now. I mean, it's the Marinos, back in Chicago, that heading up their parks department now, which is a great development. They'd like to be submitted to that city. But there's been some churn that I think have affected some of our ability, to kind of partner and.
Would that be something we want to focus on after the election, after the first of the year, and see who's there and who's in charge? Because
Yeah, that's the big one. That's what they make the Brownfield grants do the second week in November. That's all I want to say.
Because they're nuts.
'Cause
I mean, it just, right now, I don't know a community I work in that's not crazy over voting.
Yeah.
And to a point where some of them is sickening. So, I mean, wait till it's done, it's settled, see who they're gonna put in place, and then start creating that kind of,
And it just makes me mad that these positions are politicized, especially in the first departments. It's such a detriment to those communities, and their budgets have been cut like so severely. It's just so wrong.
Really
I'm sorry.
good.
you
No,
can't
it's
mix
some really
public
good and
administration
dedicated
with
people there.
politics. Take my class.
Well, and priorities change too. So my last Brownfield grant, we spent some money with Porter County redevelopment, and now I came back and I wanted to do follow-up on that, and they're not really interested. They're mad at EPA. They don't want to be in it, grant. So, and that happens all the time too. That's hard for, so I don't know, do you guys want to, and we talked about doing a workshop or something, and I invited people to form a committee or a task working group or something. And I don't think really there was a lot of follow-up on that.
For me,
On the task.
the stuff that's really helpful with grants, we can talk about grants, but honestly, the stuff you're talking about has nothing to do with me. I want to get help with the things that I'm working on, and even to connect with 2 or 3 other people that might be applying for Lake Michigan Coastal Program grants, or whatever I'm applying for, meeting with a small group that's more specific, to me is way more helpful than general conversations on grants that, the variety of what you need and what you're applying for is so great that when you get a big group together, 80% of them, it's not going to apply to them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying as far as nerve season, networking and information sharing and getting people together is, I think, the biggest strength.
Yeah, you can pick out
Getting
the
different
commonalities.
municipalities, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But there's also some knowledge in staff that you want to, I want you guys to lead the charge on some things for sure that are more regional. So I don't know, it's kind of balance, I suppose.
Well, so, and we kind of do, like, we'll give them, they hear these grants coming up, and we tell people about that, or we maybe put it, maybe we don't tell them, maybe it's a hand or something, or Ty announces this. And maybe the next step would be, who's interested in that, assign someone to a phone call or something, because, I don't know.
And throwing out the numbers, I remember just when Ryan was, you're not Ryan, I know, but when he announced that, that's my recollection of that meeting, it was like, well, how many millions of dollars are available for communities, and the grants are due in a couple of weeks, and people were talking to them, and they got it together, so I think that's, I don't know any other venue where that happens, around here, so I think
When
that's
that
really
group
strong.
gets together, okay, and it's like when we did the presentation on permit compliance,
Right,
the look on some of those faces, like they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And then, but all of a sudden, they all came to
right.
find out what it is they had to do to be in compliance. So maybe if we identify that we need input from your community on helping you get grants, and we form this committee, maybe we get a response.
But I think there's a lot to what Jan says, because every type of grant is different, every agency is different. You have to really be specialized.
So maybe it's more working groups with their.
So maybe, and that's part of why, like, the air quality education money goes so much to Drive Clean, and that way they can keep abreast of all that stuff.
And isn't that a little bit what Reggie was talking about, is getting similar to Drive Clean for
Yeah.
the stormwater public outreach type stuff that I can speak for, Lake County, and we do it, we get out in schools, especially with soil and water, we use that a lot, but we don't have a regional message on clean water that gets out to people. So I think that would be amazing. I don't know if Dirk's used the right venue for that, but it's a good
You're
discussion.
welcome to
have.
use all the regional messages we crafted in the past and recycle them. I just gave them
I
to
want
Burns
it.
Harbor.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I asked you one time, and some of the stuff you couldn't find online, so maybe I'll just take the forms and create them.
Send you all the stuff I sent to, I thought I sent you stuff. I'll send you the stuff I sent to Burns Harbor last week.
But I think that looking at their leadership and, Clean Indiana's been doing a good job with that, that if we look at the EMPC, or not the EMPC, but NICEWAG doing something like that, getting that kind of was Tim's vision in the beginning, but trying to figure out specific how, we can't do it all, I realize that. And so looking at water quality opportunities, the things with the septic systems now, what's gonna come along with that. So yeah, I think we could do something.
Yeah, also the climate stuff, there was
Yeah.
the work, the action that you have.
So.
I've been trying to, I've been using them more and more. There, like NOAA, for example, has a lot of money or funding or trajectories for climate resiliency grants. And many of them are based on already groups that have convened and have come up with the roadmap. So that would be another one.
Another thing I was thinking about is the citizens group that is behind the climate planning push we've been doing has now been pushing for sustainability commissions or committees and municipalities, so that there's an owner for energy, and because usually, and I get it, your park department is kind of land, recreation, open space, and then your public works is maybe got stormwater, maybe, but nobody's really in charge of the big picture. And so, and now there's maybe 4 or 5 of them, sustainability commissions or committees.
The town of Portage just
Porter
passed,
just did one.
and developed a, sustainability commission, and the first step will be a stormwater master plan. And
So-
there's money there for that.
The Western Michigan Business Council, Sustainability Business Council is really interesting. They went through some bad years, but how they have, they are connecting, sustainability, municipality sustainability managers, committees to sustainability folks at companies, at industry. And so a lot of their programming, which is usually networking, a lot of it is just networking, presentation really. Some pilot projects, by the way, recycling, etc. But that looks like a good example to me of a way that we could also find other opportunities or build opportunities.
Should we rebrand this committee as a sustainability committee then?
Yeah.
That word is so old.
But then you have to organize events and.
Yeah, that's true.
You just have to rename yourself in 5 years.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, you're right.
I realize that you are on a lot of work, okay, and not a lot of you, okay? So find some way where we can help you. Find some way that we can make it less cumbersome or less something.
Well, any other thoughts before we move on? I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Go into the next one.
Some kind of, but, all right, then we'll kind of move on, and if anybody has any thoughts, don't be, you're not restricted by the agenda very much here. I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of an open discussion, so.
That was the intent today anyway.
Right, yeah, good.
So the projects we've been working on this year, I keep saying I'm gonna finish the climate plan and bring it to you for adoption or public review, and I didn't say that anymore, but I'm gonna do it. But meanwhile, I had to stop and rate partnership grants, and do grants, and, but we are starting, apparently, the, climate pollution reduction planning grant with, the Chicago Mayors and Caucus and CMAP. And Lake and Porter County are part of the Chicago MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. So our metropolitan statistical area got $1 million to do a carbon pollution reduction, climate pollution reduction plan. And we have, like the first year, we're supposed to do a priority action plan and then do a more longer term action plan. the plan was to build this off of the Chicago Mayor's Caucus already has kind of a regional climate plan. And then we have our thing that we're building. And out of the $1 million, I have gotten $25,000. Yay, for us
Is
to
there a match?
do.
Do you have to have a match?
No, I don't have to do, and they really want us to focus on the input part, right? I'm gonna give them, we have an inventory, we have data, I know how to find, I mean, CMAP's getting a lot of the money to do that. It's been delayed for several months because apparently Chicago Mayor Caucus didn't know they would not have pre-award. So they've been arguing over how they can get money to start without money to start.
So this is all for planning, no implementation?
Well, so if we get a plan adopted, then everybody under our umbrella is eligible for implementation. So interestingly, the implementation money is out there now, and we don't have the planning money yet. So that's odd. And then the state is also, the state has $3 million to do a state carbon pollution reduction plan, and they're having a stakeholder input meeting here today at 5.
I thought it was 6.
6, okay, 6, I probably, no, well, double check.
I think it's, unless the person who said.
Maybe they're coming at 5, and I need to be here to meet them at 5.
Right, but I think it starts.
You think it's 6 too?
Who's all involved in that? Who got,
Is that a head claim? Because that's
No, well, because we forced the state to do it. The state didn't want to apply for 3 million, but the way that particular was structured is each state could get 3 million and then do a state plan. And then each MSA over a certain size could get $1 million. And then if you didn't take the 3 million from the state or the MSAs turned it down, they would start going down the list of smaller and smaller MSAs. Yeah, so a lot of the statewide environmental groups were really pushing the state to apply, and I don't really think they wanted to, but they did, ultimately. So, it's IDEM, it's the state plan, they're gonna, I don't know, so we get input on their priorities, and my comments will pertain to our plan, which shows a significant impact from industry. But I hope, we've been putting out information about it a couple times. I hope people will come and what do they want the state to do? What do they want IDEM to do?
The room is booked for 5:30 to 8:30, so
Okay, so your meeting's at
it
6.
seems like it's probably 6
It
o'clock.
starts at 6. yeah.
So I put 5 on my calendar because y'all know I'm like that. So that's climate. We just had a retreat for Partners for Clean Air yesterday that people might be interested in. Partners for Clean Air used to have maybe 2,000 members. All the municipalities in the region were Partners for Clean Air.
Yeah.
I think that what came to me with our last round of funding here for air quality projects, we had points in there for belonging to partnerships because we wanted more participation in everything. And I think that especially municipalities are confused because we're funding green fleets and people, so if they're working with green fleets on vehicle projects and fleet projects, then that's not the same as being a partner for clean air. And so that is obviously confusing to people. So we need to figure out messaging a little bit on that.
why couldn't we just do Partners for Clean Water?
We did do that.
We have coastal programs, we have stormwater programs, we have septic system programs, we have drinking water programs, we have wastewater programs.
Well, so Partners for Clean Air, one of the things that has changed with Partners for Clean Air is they have dues. Like, you could be a bronze member just for telling people about Ozone Action Days.
Yeah.
But they want to raise money to do stuff. They do scholarships, that's awesome. There's other things they do. And the thing about that, MS4 education too, is it was already a challenge in Northwest Indiana because we don't have a TV station, we don't have one paper, we don't have one. In the olden days, when there were only a few options, we didn't have one good, solid voice. And now, Splinter, I mean, there's,
We could have the Lake County Surveyor take the lead, and he could get Porter County Surveyor and the LaPorte County Surveyor. You could all contribute part of your budget because you collect stormwater fees and give it to the program.
All those fees.
Yeah, right. What are we gonna do about it?
You have to identify in your state audit, if you're collecting a stormwater fee, how are you using it in stormwater?
That's true. Every community does. That's a
Mhm.
community. I
um,
think it's worth continuing that discussion.
so that's, climate planning. And then we're still waiting to hear about the community fueling infrastructure grant. If we ever find out about that, we might have a lot of money for a lot of electric vehicle charging stations. Which will almost all be passed, that's all passed there. And then do you want to talk about the coastal?
I saw Joe.
Joe just
left
walked
for a
out of the
minute,
room,
so
so let's talk about it.
Joe's our partner on that. So the Indiana Department of Natural Resources Coastal Program has contracted with NERC to develop, which we have developed, Joe's back, develop a coastal natural hazards resiliency assessment tool. That's a mouthful. But the intent, we worked with Coastal to put together the assessment, kind of drew from some other examples from other states. So that tool is live, it is on our website under resiliency. And NERC has been working with Coastal Program to reach out to all of the communities in the coastal zone of Northwest Indiana, so basically the northern portion of the counties, everything draining to Lake Michigan, to conduct listening sessions, to meet with them, to help them work through that tool, which when you open it, it looks a little long. I understand it might be a little bit daunting, but the intention is that it's not meant to be a heavy lift for a municipality. The best way I think is to assemble a team of different department folks, elected officials, who have the topical knowledge to complete this assessment. And really, we've found that in kind of sitting down and working through it with the right people at the table, it doesn't really take more than an hour or two. And
just did it in less than an hour
Yeah,
or two.
it was
Is it
not
over?
that bad.
You guys,
Yeah.
it's not,
It
it was,
wasn't bad.
can I get a quote there?
I did.
Can you repeat that?
It's not bad.
Bill, can you
It
repeat
was-
what you just said?
Put it on the website. It was not that bad.
It was not that bad, okay. So we're working through that. It really is, meant to be a useful tool for the local governments in terms of just doing a gut check of where you are with your resiliency to natural hazards. So primarily here are things like flooding, erosion. Some of the communities are going to be directly on the shoreline and have some shoreline issues of shoreline erosion, coastal flooding. Some of the communities more inland are just going to be mainly dealing with fluvial erosion, riverine erosion and flooding.
Sand starvation, not just erosion.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's, thank you,
Shoreline
Susan.
issue.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Trapped in Dune Acres.
Yes, absolutely. So that's the main intent of it, is to be useful for your communities. There are, I can't tie this to a guaranteed funding pot, but part of the intention is that there are several, federal and more local funding opportunities that hopefully working through this exercise can put your community in a good place of, oh, did you know you need to have this plan in place in order to be eligible for this funding from FEMA? Kind of just that checklist. I am looking around the room if there's anybody that I need to pester to help get their assessment done. We're trying to get as many communities as we can completed. But I will say we have some rock stars in the room because Ogden Dunes was a very early partner.
Did Tom Davenport participate in that or something?
I don't know that Tom did. Who?
He's on the environmental board.
It was very early on. Ogden Dunes got theirs back to us. Very early on.
They got a beach nourishment.
Yeah. So they worked through it and got us that very quickly. We met recently with Hobart, and I believe you guys are very close to completion, Lake County as well. We sat down and had, I think, like an hour meeting, maybe two tops, and you guys had a few little things you wanted to check. Oh, let me check in with this staff person, but nearing completion. I know that Dune Acres, thank you so much, is working on the assessment. Really appreciate that. So yeah, that's that project. We will be getting at least an initial report to Lake Michigan Coastal Program by the end of the year for the communities that have responded. Any questions about that? Joe, anything to add?
Questions from the audience about like why we're doing it, other than like kind of like that self-check for communities. But I guess the only other thing I would add is that coastal program is utilizing the needs assessment as an opportunity to figure out what our baseline is. What are the community's greatest needs? And every community is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to see if there's some commonalities so we can figure out, all right, what types of tools or data or trainings do we need to bring to offer to help communities invest in themselves in dealing with natural coastal hazards.
And as I was saying earlier to some of our partners, there's an option for a question mark response or a NA, not applicable response. And those, it's okay if those are question marks. If we're saying something and you don't know what we're talking about, question mark, and that's valuable information for coastal program. People don't know what we're talking about here. People don't know if they have this. Maybe that's an area where we can provide some support.
Are you going to be developing a report or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not going to rank communities. It's not going to give individual communities a grade. It's not going to say City of Hobart said X, Y, Z.
Right.
It's going to be kind of the hopefully 32 of the 30 communities that responded, 3/4 said that they have this in place.
So just a summary.
Just a summary, yeah, a summary, kind of commonalities, yeah.
And I'm joking about this, it's not what's so bad. Doing that assessment itself was really useful. We found some things that we need to take care
That
of.
was my next question.
I was joking when I said that.
And would you
I
say?
think it's useful to go, oh, we didn't know we needed to do that,
No,
or,
it
oh, I
was.
didn't know you did that, I should have
Yeah.
been part of it,
was.
So there we go, we have an endorsement
Yes.
for do the assessment. And I think when you open it and it looks long, it seems a little daunting, but then I think the best way is to arrange a meeting with the project team, get a couple of staffers, that's what you guys did, get a couple of relevant staffers, your there's a list in there of who you should invite, your MS4, your emergency management, your parks. Get those people to the table with Coastal and NERC and just work through it, and it's pretty quick.
Thank you. All right.
Kathy, did you have more questions, or do you want me to
I
go
was-
into?
No, go ahead, because I'm trying to think of actually, for those of you who may be aware, the state has requested a slight change in this implementation plan budget for air quality conformity in order for our transportation plan to meet that conformity. They're messing around with the margins of safety to allow us to pass conformity with the transportation model in the budget of volatile organic compounds. And so that should come out in the Federal Register, we hope, in the spring, which will enable us to actually have an approved plan, which will enable us to have approved transportation infrastructure program. So right now we're kind of in a circling pattern with a lot of our transportation things, all that air quality budget winds its way through federal processes, the state has their part done. So that's an interesting thing that some of you may care about. And a brownfield grant, waiting to find out about the GLRA criminal justice grant, waiting to find out about the community fueling infrastructure grant. And then what else?
Yeah, I wanted to just give an update on community, of course. We had a GLRI, U.S. Forest Service grant that is not officially closed out, but the funds have been expended, all of the deliverables exceeded. That was to plant, I believe, 800 trees over the past couple of years. So that one will be closing out. I just need to wrap up the final report and submit that to U.S. Forest Service. Looking to, NERC has a inventory tool that we ask our tree recipients when, we procure all these native trees, subgrant those to community partners. And we do ask that community partners then inventory those trees using this simple app on their cell phone. Should only take a minute to inventory the trees, ideally at time of planting. So we're working through kind of the data that's been collected, working with our spatial analysts to make sure that all of that data is kind of neat and tidy for previously planted trees. So if you've received community trees through NERC and you have not inventoried them, please do reach out to me. I have Joe. Oh. Okay. And we've also submitted a Great Lakes Restoration Initiative U.S. Forest Service grant just this past month to continue the Community Pass-Through Grants program. That proposal is to plant an additional 1,500 trees. So I don't know exactly when we'll be notified about that, but hopefully, sometime in the coming months we'll be notified there. Joe, did you have something?
So with the inventory, the way it was envisioned, to come up with it is it's really important for us not just to document kind of like the measurables but it's to tell the story that goes back to this grant program and some of the issues and so forth. So by taking that spatial data of where the trees are, that can be overlaid with like things like floodplains or EJ areas and so forth. So we can only tell the story as best we can, having that information. So just at like a few minutes time, like during planning, drop that point, get it, help us be successful for future
Yes, and it's a requirement for U.S. Forest Service GLRI to inventory where you show where you planted the trees, and it's important, I think, for the long term. This is an investment long term, so it's important for us, both the tree recipient and NERC and Community as the sub-grantor, to know where those trees are and to be able to go back and say, how is that tree doing 5 years later? We've also worked with DePaul University. They have done some inventory work using interns to assess the condition of trees. Long-term kind of for all of the community partners, SCA, Wildlife Habitat Council, so that we can get some data on what's our survival rate. Are these trees thriving? Under what conditions are the trees thriving? Do we need to tailor our program?
It's easier to do it when you're planning it than to go back later and do it, because then it's a whole.
Exactly. Yep. I will also mention that NERC is in the early stages of, we are going to be undertaking in the next year a transportation resiliency assessment. So we've talked about the coastal resiliency study. There's a lot of resiliency work going on. NERC will be working specifically on a resiliency assessment specific to transportation. We just had some initial meetings with NERC staff to kind of think that out, scope that out. We're going to be looking at surface transportation, so looking at our roads, our transit, and kind of taking a look at projected changes in heat, in precipitation, where are our roadways and our transportation system vulnerable. So we're just, like I said, we're just kind of starting to plan that project out, but all of you on EMPC, you'll get a notification when we start to convene a stakeholder or working group to kind of help us. Right now, we're doing kind of a inventory of what data is available, because a lot of this is very data driven. So we're working with our staff to see what GIS layers do we have, what do we need, looking to kind of clarify the scope of this, and then we will be holding a work group meeting, convening a work group. Initially, we'll be looking to get stakeholder input on the scope of this study, what exactly is covered, what are the important things to look at, helping us fill in gaps in data, and then kind of going from there with the analysis.
Bill asked me to, and I forgot again, but I never. Many of you may have seen the news that the Midwest Hydrogen Hub was selected for funding. I think so. They're doing a lot of. They're trying to figure out how to upscale and implement hydrogen fuel in a better way. And so there's a big partnership with Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana, and that will include BP. And so the Department of Energy had a stakeholder Zoom last night at 5, which may be part of my confusion with tonight, about that. There's a lot of moving parts in this. They identified 10 kind of sub-projects of that project of where the money is going to go, Some of them are down at Purdue. Some of it's at the BP refinery. I think they are trying to be very organized. My primary thing was, you're the Department of Energy, do you have all the environmental agencies engaged so that they're keeping track of permitting and NEPA at the same time as you're doing this? They indicated that they did. And I know in our region, and there's a lot of concern about, there's all these different kinds of ways to make hydrogen out of renewable natural gas or regular natural gas or out of water. There's some of it's gonna involve some nuclear plants, different ways to do it. They're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. And I think that a lot of people are concerned that the hydrogen is not, they'd like to see 100% renewable. Obviously, that would be the dream, but I think just looking at our own greenhouse gas inventory and the industries that are so hard to, they're so energy intense and chemically create carbon or create greenhouse gases, I do think it behooves all of us to just pay attention and keep an open mind and about what the risks really are, and not just assume it's bad just because it's coming from BP. That's what I kind of hear rumblings back, that this is going to be bad, don't do it, skip. And I think it's important to follow it. But so they do seem sincere. They're going to have another Zoom. So I wasn't sure exactly how those were going to go, if they were intended to be just invitees or public. I do think it was very public, and so the next time they have one, I think we'll push it out so everybody's aware of it.
Thanks. Yeah, I just knew that. And I
Yeah.
know there's an article in the paper on it, and I just wanted everybody on our committee to be aware of it.
There wasn't much yet about the storage part. It was all about the generation of the hydrogen and how that was going to happen. But I think on the ground here, it's going to be the pipelines going through, and then this next string of counties south of us getting the storage facilities that have a lot of concerns. So
That's probably not.
yeah, so to make the hydrogen fuel, they have to take the carbon out of the natural gas, and then they run the storage part. So they go hand in hand. They're talking about the hydrogen hub, but the hydrogen hub means a need for carbon storage.
Which can't be done in the county because they don't have the right substrate or whatever.
Right, they're gonna do it in the south county, so, but they have to get it from the refinery to there, which means pipelines. And they can't share the natural gas pipelines because for some reason they explained that my chemistry brain was too tired to listen to.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but we still even need to do the round robin, because we just talked about one.
Yeah, we kind of did that.
Does anybody have any other suggestions?
Just say, are you to announcements yet?
Yeah.
The Nice White Group has their monthly meeting. We moved it from the first Tuesday because of Election Day to the 9th. We will be in the town of Porter at Hawthorne Park. You're welcome to attend 9 to 11. A couple of very good presentations and information. But then in December, on December the 5th, Porter County is hosting that meeting along with the city of Valparaiso at the Forest Park Golf Course. And this is an opportunity to really find out what Porter County is doing as far as compliance with their permit, with any of their ag implementations, and then also what the city of Valparaiso is doing. And we're going to look at some long-term green infrastructure practices, clean community grants, and some other things like that. So you're welcome to attend. December the 5th, 9 o'clock at Forest Park. If you need a reminder or the agenda, I'll send it to you. Okay?
All right. I've got one. The Wolf Lake Watershed Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow at Calumet College. They're doing a walk at 8 a.m. down to the Wildlife Observation Pier. But the formal kind of meeting starts at 9 a.m. at Cal College. So I will be part of a watershed panel at 9, or at 10:50, so be there to be square. Any other announcements? All right. Hearing none?
Well, anything
Anything else for
special
the-
on your agenda for January the 4th?
I always say the climate plan, I'm never ready, so,
Snow and ice.
Yeah. No doubt.
No,
I
this is
don't know.
gonna be warm, no.
why, do you have a request?
Do you wanna have your volunteer group or something put together by then?
Try that?
We try. Put a call out.
Yeah, we'll put a poll or something out, who wants to be on this grant. I think it's not just writing the grants, it is the administering the grants and having a grant fundable project.
Right.
Because sometimes the problem is, like Jan, what the town wants to do isn't exactly what the grant is for, and sometimes, and, you know.
Kevin, I'd like to be
All right. We'll call up for that and feel free to, volunteer yourself too.
Volunteering.
Yeah.
Danielle, because you.
Yeah, I'll be back in the country on January 11th, so.
Okay.
Where are you going?
Visit family in Chile.
Well, do remember with January 4th, if you have new elected
Yeah.
officials,
Yeah.
they won't be ready to attend the meeting by January.
Yeah, and we won't have committee assignments. We've
Yeah.
been holding the same official committee assignments since COVID.
I can do Zoom or something, but that's all I will.
Well, would you rather hold off to February and
Yeah,
get,
maybe.
instead of having our first meeting of the year, have it in February?
Yeah, we could do, I actually, the 4th seems kind of far away from New Year's, but I often don't have the January meeting because of the holiday, and
Yeah.
we can just do February.
Works for me. Joe?
Just thought of something. It's not like a workshop announcement or anything like that. Coastal resiliency study, the Army Corps, the big boy study.
That's bad.
Still making progress, however, the public meetings that were supposed to be getting kicked off here in the next couple of weeks, over the next month and a half, 2 months, have kind of, the brakes have been pumped a little bit on that. U.S. Army Corps of Engineer is still trying to set up a contract with Argonne Labs to have like this mirror website, which is really important for the public meetings, because Argonne Labs is able to do kind of like live polling and so forth. And that contract has not been set up, so Indiana's meeting was supposed to be at the end of this month. We're not sure exactly when that's going to be, but they're still making progress on the other parts. They've got a website that they are developing. We send in our contacts list, so people will be getting like a bulk email announcements about the public meeting and about the website. It will put in there, like, to keep up to date, to please sign up for that website for the announcements. So that is going, I'm just putting that out there. That's going to be the best way to stay engaged, is once that announcement comes out, sign up for updates. So as they become available and workshops start happening, that you are aware of them.
All right.
Jen, can anybody sign up for the Urban Waters?
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're not on that email list, you should be, because the programs that they presented last week in Portage were awesome. And you get, it's not a lot of time to hear what people have to say, but it gives you an in-step on who's doing what, where, and how we can get more engaged in it.
Yeah, if you're not looped into that, you're welcome to message me, assuming you guys all have my email address. Victoria Whitting is the ambassador now. That is VWITTIG@pnw.edu.
I wanted to ask, we had been approached by the Great Lakes Council of Mayors, and we have a lot longer acronym, about 3 of the shoreline communities had projects they wanted to submit for coastal resilience, and they were wondering if we could be the applicant and manage that, sub it out for them, and we had a decline due to capacity. And I don't know, was that Dune Acres, or, do you guys know where Ogden Dunes? Okay.
I thought it was Michigan City. Was Michigan City one of them?
I don't think
No,
Michigan
it was-
City
I think maybe it was-
like-
I know it was Beverly Shores.
and then maybe, I can't remember if it was Michigan Shores or
I
Long
just-
Beach.
I just-
It was Long Beach, Beverly Shores.
I
And I
didn't
wanted
think
to
from Long
say
Beach that they were
Ogden
doing that,
Dunes.
but I'll check.
Okay, well, I just wanted to know if they found someone to help them put those in, we just couldn't. It was a
What's the grant?
It's building resilient
brick, I think it was a
structure
brick
in
grant.
communities.
Yeah, it was a brick grant.
And you couldn't do it because of internal staffing, okay?
But I believe they still did intend to apply.
Yeah, I think that we just gave it back to the Great Lakes mayors, because they,
Okay.
I think they honestly kind of asked us as a courtesy,
Yeah.
so that they weren't stepping on our toes.
yeah, because they did a whole survey of projects.
You know, I think Beverly Shores, I'm trying to think, I think they got one. I think it might be them.
Okay.
Joe?
How do we stay engaged with that? I guess. There's so
We
many
go back and
areas
check
that
the
they-
list of communities and ask.
And I
them.
can reach out to the individual who reached out to us, just to
Yeah.
get a status of, did you guys submit that, and keep us, keep us posted, keep us on the list.
Okay.
It was the Smith Group that was commissioned by the Fish and Wildlife Foundation, that they went around and did inventories of all the coastal communities and then submitted a framework or template for them to do on their coastal planning. And it was confusing because a couple of calls from mayors said, are we required to do this? And they thought they were, and it was just a sample of what you could do, okay? And so trying to get that straightened out was a little difficult, but all of the the Lake Michigan coastal people got this.
One little minor adjustment on the agenda. Next meeting is scheduled for January 4th of.
Yeah, and we just moved that to February.
Is it the first or the eighth?
Oh, that's true. Okay, so it'll be the first Thursday in February.
First Thursday is the first, second Thursday is the 8th,
So it'll be February 1st.
okay.
There's going to be a presentation because they asked about equipment. It's a stakeholder meeting. This is the third stakeholder meeting. They've had two around the state. So I thought it was significant that they're having one here. I don't know what items mean. So they call it a stakeholder meeting, not a public meeting. So I don't know if there's going to be formal comments or just, kind of conversational. I'm not sure. I wonder if they have recordings of the other ones. Maybe we could.
I would think they would.
Yeah.
They're public, yeah.
Kevin, you said they have their room reserved till when?
5:30 to 8:30.
Wow.
We would have framed it on either side with a half hour or so, maybe
Probably 6 to
6 to 8.
6 to 8. We would have given, an
Yeah.
extra half hour setup and an extra half hour to clean up. Would probably be why we set it up that way.
What date is that?
Today.
Oh, God. Okay.
See y'all back here?
Yeah.
And so I believe the next meeting date, then we agreed we were gonna try to do February, so that would be February
Yeah.
1st, I believe.
Yes.
All right, anything else? Anybody? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Sometimes.
Someone
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
They don't ask you about it.